Good morning or afternoon to all. It's great to be part of this International Agricultural Innovation Conference, the seventh in 2022. I'm going to talk about transforming agriculture in my home country, Colombia, and linking that to knowledge, needs, science, innovation, etc., to fit the discussions and the purpose of this conference. And I will do this using a Colombian background in policy, in the Ministry of Agriculture, among other jobs, and also as lead of national and international agricultural research organizations. I would like to start with a quick global context, which is basically framed around these discussions we had last year around the UN Food System Summit, where we were discussing that there was a need, or that there is a need, to promote, the transformation of food systems so they are more environmental friendly, but also cope better with climate change, or address better the nutritional challenges society faces, for example. And why do we insist that food systems need to change? Because on one side, agriculture and the current food system has done as a great service for humanity in the recent past, in the recent decades, through increased productivity, through reduction of hunger, and increased agricultural output, and a way of doing things with a lot of technology use that has helped with the outputs, but still facing great challenges in terms of malnutrition, loss of biodiversity, and a system that's not given enough for farmers or for consumers. We also see a system that, on average, in terms of from the consumption side of things, where things are disbalanced because of economic, cultural, and a number of other reasons, where some food groups are not on average being used enough, and where some others, such as meat, for example, or some starchy vegetables, are overconsumed on average. There may be places where their consumption still has an opportunity to grow, but on the whole, there is an excess consumption that puts pressure on the system and limits other possibilities of producing other food groups to balance the diet in a better manner. And of course, we see that these food systems are putting a lot of pressure in terms of how they can be sustained in the future. Phosphorus, for example, if we maintain its usage and its leakage and its loss as it's happening at the moment, we will have a big shock in the coming years. Or if we look at the rate of the loss of species related to agroecosystems, it's much higher, much faster than any possible replenishment or recovery through further evolution. And all of this also means that the value of the global food system in the market value is smaller than the cost, meaning that if we add the health, environmental, economic, and other hidden costs such as food loss, waste, etc., that cost is higher than the market value, meaning society is paying more than it's getting in the food system, which is a very worrying number and trend. So if we look at Colombia, and Colombia is similar to many other developing countries in the tropics, so what I'm talking about, Colombia could work in other parts of the world, is a country where agriculture was prominent, very important in the economy. It was a driver for most of the 20th century, but at the end of the century, given economic liberalization and a number of changes, we started to see, and of course growth in other sectors, that our GDP went down 10 percentage points, and on the early 2000s reached a low point of 6.8 and that's 2020. In 2020, we saw some recovery to 7.65%, which shows that there is room. There is room for the ag sector to do more for the economy, more for people, not only in the country, but elsewhere, as Colombia, as many tropical countries, has a great capacity not only to feed its population, but going beyond that. But a country that faces great elements in, for example, very low labor productivity, 15.1% compared to 47.5% in Costa Rica, for example. And that, productivity is associated to many things, but one of the drivers of that low productivity is the poor land rights in the country. Land tenure that increases uncertainty of returns, that cannot be presented as collateral for credit, and informality that lends itself for unsustainable practice and land degradation, for example. Colombia is a big country with more than half of its territory composed of forests that are very important for humanity, and a big part, 43 million hectares for agricultural use, out of which a share of that is agriculture, and another big part, 34.4 million hectares, dedicated mainly, not exclusively, to what we call extensive and low productivity production systems in cattle ranching, that for Colombia are the cause of about 14.5% of our greenhouse gas emissions. And there is a linkage between the two, an unfortunate linkage. We see that deforestation or deforested areas that can be deforested for a number of reasons are then used for livestock production, and in a vicious circle, which is very complex, and of course is connected to the land tenure problem, as there are incentives to cut forest, to establish livestock, and to wait a few decades to try to formalize that land that should have remained as forest as a private property. So we got very low productivity livestock sector that still is important for job creation, but that if you look at the productivity, 0.6 units of cattle per hectare is very, very low. So that's the landscape. That's what we are seeing. So I would like to finalize with a few elements just on how to change this trend. And there is many solutions, but I will just cover a few that I think are important, an important part of this recipe. So to start, we need to change the policy framework. Policies in our countries have been dedicated and have been rewarding productivity, and it's essential to rebalance those policies so they reward also environmental sustainable practice and what comes out of farms in terms of nutrition, etc. So it's a changing of the overall framework. It's also tackling in a very biodiverse country the multidimensional role of agrobiodiversity, and one of the possibilities is to focus on the potential for better nutrition. In Brazil, for example, we mapped 20 species of vegetables. We prioritized a number of products according to their nutritional potential, and the government followed with a national ordinance to incorporate that biodiversity, additional production that was not common in public procurement, school feeding programs, etc. So that's something Colombia can easily follow as well to diversify the landscape. And of course, a more diversified landscape helps combat malnutrition, can generate new opportunities, new economic opportunities in terms of value chains, increasing resilience of farmer livelihoods, and contributing as well to ecological restoration. If we look at the livestock sector, we have millions of important improved pastures such as brachiarias, with a few million hectares of brachiaria cultivation for forage, but that's still very limited in terms of the biodiversity of forages that can be assessed, bred, and incorporated. So that's a very important priority, to really ensure that there is a wider set of species that can be used to also mitigate nitrification and give a better options for management of more sustainable livestock systems. There are also great elements and knowledge in Colombia and elsewhere on how do you sustainably intensify livestock production. Silvopastoral systems are an area where Colombia, and this is a great paradox, is a champion. So there are already systems that can be scaled. And of course, that needs to be done with a carrot and stick kind of model, where you really reward silvopastoral systems and ways of sustainably intensifying productions, with, of course, adding cost to the unproductive or the very, very low productive cattle ranching. And of course, we need to strengthen institutions to achieve a better land use. And this is not only across large landscapes, but also to start regulating what happens in the farm. How do you balance in your own farm what you use to produce and what you use to restore or to conserve? And there is a great potential and gap we need to address to do that. And lastly, and I was part of the creation of a system called the National System for Agricultural Innovation that was passed by Congress in 2017. It's really ensuring that agriculture responds and is backstopped and supported with a research system, with an extension system that is inclusive, that incorporates the needs of the different populations, indigenous populations, Afro-Colombian populations, etc. So the solutions are context-specific and economic and environmental and socially valuable. Without this, it would be important. So basically, this is a message that, yes, it's great to have important main crops that occupy a lot of territory, but that needs to be diversified, as I explained. And there needs to be a substantial transformation of the livestock sector in order to intensify it and also to allow it to give some of that less productive land for cattle into agriculture or into restoration efforts. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you so much.